This is a video of a workshop I did with a gentleman called Daniel Hindsley, and somebody you might have seen in earlier videos where he explained his recovery story. In today's video we went through a workshop because Daniel felt that journaling was one of the catalysts of his recovery. He did lots of other things, but he feels that he got some real benefit from journaling and he still uses it now and he no longer has any pain. In the workshop I give a basic explanation of the mechanisms of journaling and how it can be effective. Daniel explains his experience. He goes through the different techniques that he's used, and we also have three participants who raised questions, who are not familiar with journaling or just asking how they could use it more effectively for themselves, and those questions are answered in the workshop also. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about journaling, hear someone's experience of using it, get some of your questions about it answered, then watch the video. So this workshop, I'm a clinician, Daniel's a patient, but obviously has good experience in this field and actually has some training in coaching, although as a separate job. It's about sharing the experience of Daniel in a way that you could maybe take something away that you can practice yourself. Don't feel that you have to do it now in this session, but we've kind of created it so you could have a go if you wanted to, and there'll be a little breakout once I've spoken, Daniel spoke, and you've asked some questions where you can have a little practice for up to 15-20 minutes. I'm going to have a go. I don't have any pain, but I'm going to use it like Daniel uses it, and let's see how it pans out. So the basic theory, I'll cover that. We'll listen to Daniel and his story and how he applies it. The opportunity to ask questions. We'll have this breakout and then we'll come back together if you're happy to. And if you want to share anything that you see as helpful feedback, then please please do, and you get the opportunity to do that. So take pain or persistent pain as consisting of three essential reactions or three essential component parts. We have these painful thoughts or memories. At the time they happen, they're just a present event that's a painful thought. You might have the emotions that ally to those thoughts. Every thought's a feeling, remember. Every thought has a corresponding feeling. And in that moment, we'd use a reaction to get out of the situation. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And that should allow us to escape the situation or survive it or overcome it. Now, what can happen is this loop plays round and round. So we don't really break this reactive pattern. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, it keeps on being repeated. A bit like changing gear in the car. You start not to have to look at your hand anymore. It just goes out to the side as you come to the roundabout. So your body plays out these reactions. You think you're in control of it, but actually the habits, the memories fade, but they're still there. So you have unconscious memories, you have conscious memories. You can remember some events, some of the things that trigger our pain are beyond conscious awareness because we didn't even have conscious thought at the time they were installed. So there's conscious and unconscious memories. They have the ability to trigger emotions. So imagine there's an unconscious thought you have linked to a situation or a time or an event or a place or a person that triggers a feeling inside of you. You haven't even seen the thought. You think, why do I feel like this? If you can't find an answer, you'll quickly go into the reactive behaviors to get out of the feeling. And that's overuse of these behaviors. And this could be thinking, it could be running, it could be drinking, drugs, sex, shopping, gambling. They all feel pretty thrilling as you do these things. Pleasure-based because it blocks how you feel and then you can't think when you're doing them, but they create pain and the loop's complete. So the memories become distant and invisible. The feelings become so numb because they're blocked by whatever the reactive behavior is. But unfortunately, that reactive behavior, for all it's good in an acute setting to survive or overcome and escape, repeating those physiological responses, reactions, creates pain. And then we wonder, where's the pain come from? Because we haven't seen the memories, haven't seen felt the emotions, we feel the pain. So this exercise, as well as all the other exercises, isn't about the doing. It's not the nuts and bolts of the doing, although that's important. It's the intent behind it. It's the intent, because the intent is to break the cycle so that the activity is not reactive. Okay, it's not a reactive run. I need to go for a run. It's not I need to go back to work. It's not I have to have another drink, I've got to eat another cake. It's not unconscious reactive thoughts. I'll just mute you, Sam, I think. It's not it has to be a conscious, this is the right thing to do in place of the other reactive behaviors. So journaling is an interrupt in that cycle. So we have memories. It doesn't matter about where memories are. Hippocampus is kind of the place, that part of the place in the brain predominantly involved in memories and spatial awareness of who did what to where. So it kind of builds a picture of that memory. The emotions, again, it's right through the brain, but the amygdala is the classic simplistic place that we saw. The amygdala is the emotional center or danger signal, if you like. And when the memories are brought to life, if it triggers an emotional charge, the amygdala has a reflex and could trip the switch on all the responses used in the moment of the event. It could be years ago. Now, what the pen does, what the activity does of journaling, it brings you to the present moment. Okay, so you're not acting in the future or the past reactively. It's bringing you to the present moment. So the pen is have you heard of the saying, come to your senses? Well, you come into your senses, you're taking a pen and you're consciously gripping it, and you've chosen the framework in which to do it, and you place it on the paper, and you start to express these emotions linked to these memories, whether you know them or not. So sometimes you can go back to a memory if it's distinctly painful. If you don't have an awareness of a memory, it doesn't matter, because you can write about the emotions. You're just expressing emotions. And rather than being in a reactive loop that goes round, they're getting discharged, just like going for a walk with a dog, just to go like chatting with the friends, just like running a bath and putting a candle on, or whatever is a healthier mechanism to use. It's a distinctly present moment activity that once you start, and Daniel explained this, it kind of flows. It kind of flows, and it becomes a chain for the brain that's much easier to break than a link. Because once you've got the memory and emotion and discharging it, memory, emotion and discharging it, the memory gets faded, the emotional power gets faded, and the discharge becomes effortless. Does that make sense? So, I'm not an expert in journaling. These are some of the topics that you can consider using, but I'm going to hand the baton to Daniel to maybe explore. Daniel, if you're happy to say a little bit about yourself, for those who don't know you. Alison's watched you a couple of times. I'm sure she won't mind hearing you're a third. And if you were to just explain how you came to journaling and how it's helped you, and maybe off you go in terms of a breakdown of how you think other people could use it. Just have to unmute yourself.
Yes, of course. Schoolboy error. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so for those I haven't spoke to or haven't watched my recovery video, I had about 15 years of chronic back pain, sciatica, pain right down the legs, often at points couldn't walk, quite severe, to the point where I had MRI scans, got degenerative disc disease diagnosis, a surgeon, and the surgeon said, go away and manage it, or have surgery, but I recommend you put that off as long as possible. And then long story short, it took me around 15 years to come across this whole sort of mind-body connection and work. And then I sort of did everything. I did all the recommended stuff. I read books, which is quite passive. I did the breathing techniques, and started to get quite a lot of improvement, to the point where I was the periods between painful episodes was just expanding, which was awesome. However, I think when you read a book, I'd read about journaling techniques, and I'd read what we should do, or what I should do, but I'll tell my story without the science behind it. I think I conceptualized it, but really couldn't be asked doing the work, or I thought I didn't need to do any work. I thought just understanding it would be enough, but it turned out that it wasn't. And I came back to it, so having read, I think the period of having reading about journaling and actually getting going. I think I tried it once actually initially. It made me a little bit depressed, so I left it. And then I came back to it about, within a period of 2 years to eventually become pain-free. And I think be careful using that as well. I think there's quite a lot of pressure you can put on yourself to become 100% pain-free. And I think even though I don't have anywhere near the amount of pain, I might get tension every now and again. I think it's natural to get tension in our bodies, and we just, once you've had 15 years of pain, it's quite also natural to jump on it and catastrophize. But usually if I feel tension, I can now get rid of it in journaling without it coming into a full-blown episode. And I haven't had a full-blown episode for a number of years. So there we go. Yeah, can we have the screen back, Drew?
Yeah.
But what I was hoping to do. So basically, I'm a volunteer. I work in the tech industry. I don't volunteer for the tech industry. I work in the tech industry. That's how I pay the bills. But just I feel like this compelling drive to try and help other people for some reason. I just think 15 years can be reduced with some journaling exercises and reading a few books, and I'd like to try and spread the word so other people don't have to do 15 years, and hopefully other people will do the same when they recover as well. That's my hope. So what I like to volunteer myself to do things like this, and write articles and do recovery stories on videos, etc., whatever I can to help. So I was going to just run through a couple of four of the 5 of the journaling exercises that I would do regularly. But I just wondered if anyone had any burning questions about journaling that I need to make sure I cover in this, or any experience prior that they want to mention. Was that you, Simon?
Yeah, just one question. It's always struck me when I've tried to journal in the sense of having a private space to really put down on paper what I feel or think. That sense of it's there in black and white, and also that fear of that's private. I don't want anybody else to read that. So I think that for me was something I was very acutely aware of, and it's been quite inhibitory. So anyway, that's just a comment. If you could touch on that, that would be useful.
Certainly will. Yeah. If people read what I'd wrote, I think I'd be locked up somewhere. So yeah, I get that. Anyone else? Anything they want to make sure is covered? Feel free to ask questions as we go along, by the way. I'd rather this be not me just talking at you. If you've got something that comes up whilst I cover any of this, then please do ask.
Daniel?
Yeah.
Can I just show you a couple of questions that I noticed? I'll come back to this screen, but I'll come back to this screen. These questions. So what will it make you depressed? Does it work? What did you feel? Should I journal? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So just.
Okay. You've got that on there, right? Okay, you've got them written down already. Cool. Well, if not, I will crack on and make sure we cover Simon's point. I think as well, in a non-scientific way, I'll explain, I think, what was happening with me. So I think basically there are things that happen in our daily lives or in my daily life that caused emotions. And I didn't want to feel those emotions. And I was in the positive thinking camp. So I suppressed them with positive thought. I didn't want to, so something happens, don't want to feel like that, thank you very much. It doesn't, I don't like the way that makes me feel. I will positive think my way through this. And then I suppress it. And the suppressing means that, in my opinion, don't know what the scientific evidence is for it, that it doesn't move on. Like normally now, something would happen, or feel an emotional reaction. I'll observe it. I'll allow it to be there for a bit, and then I'll return to the present and it'll disappear. Whereas before, something happened, I got an emotion, I don't want to feel that, suppress, and then in my opinion, it stays in the body. That's, don't know if that could be scientifically backed up yet, Drew, but that's certainly how I explain it to myself and to others. So I felt like I'd gotten a lot of success from doing the breathing work, because I was calming the nervous system. Things that were coming in were no longer bothering me. So I think something would come. I feel myself getting a bit anxious, a bit of tension. I could breathe. I could go for a walk, or just being more aware and more conscious of things that were coming up in real time. But in my mind, it feels like now looking back, I had a lot of stuff sat there that was suppressed. And I think for me, journaling was the way to get that out. And one of the first techniques that was recommended to me is this timeline exercise. And when I did this, I didn't have to look far to work out what was going wrong there, what might have happened. So I've drawn it here. Let me see this. I don't know. See that? Is that viewable at all? But basically, you've got a timeline from birth to now. And then along the top, I've got life things that happened. And then along the bottom, I've got symptoms. And I didn't want to do it year by year. So I've just put like the middle of my, how old I was in the middle. I'm 43 now, if you're guessing. So nearly 44. So I put my age in the middle. And then on one side, I've got life things above life things, bottom symptoms. So I didn't have to look far to find out that when I started with my back pain and my sciatica, I was about 22. I was just taking on a massive mortgage. I was my wife was pregnant. I changed jobs. So I had a new job, a new house, and a baby coming along. All probably one of the most stressful events in life. And obviously being super positive, just didn't acknowledge any anxiousness about any of that, any stress, just positive thought my way through the situation. So I didn't have to look far. And the process, doing that process, I found a number of things that probably should be addressed. And what, can you flick that the slide back up, Drew, please? So I don't know if you've put this free writing. So that was the first thing. The first thing was timeline. And the next thing that I did from a journaling perspective was this free writing. And the concept here is that you just pick one of the events off that timeline and you start writing about it. Now, for me, it's a really weird experience, is journaling, because I set off with 3 pages, so A5 pages preferably. Some people do it on a time. I think we've got a time coming up, but there's something about forcing yourself to keep writing for 3 pages that gets you beneath the initial thought. So it tends to be, I'll start to write, this is how I felt at the time. Or it could be even the sun is coming through the window, or whatever it would be, just to get the pen moving. And then you sort of get what's at top of mind coming out. And then as I keep pushing, and sometimes there's a lag, but I aim for 3 pages, it gets deeper. And then sometimes random things come out that catch me by surprise. It's like feels like tapping into the subconscious stuff that's been suppressed, and things come out, and it catches me by surprise, really. And to Simon's point, one of the things I do, some exercises, the timeline I will keep. stuff like the 3 pages I will quite regularly rip up or burn because I'll get sectioned if anyone reads it. Because sometimes it's just completely random. I might start just describing things in the room, and then, or I might start writing. The brain will tell me what I think I'm writing about, and then about 15 minutes later I'll get something that's come up from the gut that I got no idea I was going to be writing about. So it might not happen like that for everybody, but I know other people that it does, and it's quite a strange experience. And addictive, and sometimes it's right on the last sentence, something will come up that I think, that's what's been bothering me really. It's not what I thought it was, it's this, and I just find it amazing. So that's one thing. So on my timeline, I had obviously the thing about the mortgage and the getting married and having kids, and I was going through this exercise. I got quite a lot of relief from unlocking some of that stuff, but then there was one sort of subject I was avoiding quite heavily. There's 2 things. One was so my friend was killed when I was 16, and he was 18. So that was quite difficult to write about, and I didn't want to write about that and avoided it for some time. But I got there in the end. And then also I noticed one of my symptoms was acne. I had quite severe acne when I was a kid, across back and chest. And it didn't come to me till after I'd fixed my back pain that I think that was related to growing up in quite a religious family, and I had a girlfriend at 16, and there were certain things that you weren't supposed to do until you were married that were happening. And I think I was getting a lot of guilt emotions and things like that I didn't express. And I think that might have come out in skin, which makes sense. So that's the thing for me. So was that I didn't have to look far to be able to map the symptoms. And I don't think it needs to be such thing as like your friend being murdered. I don't think that's necessarily, doesn't have to be that severe. But when I look back now and I look at my reaction to that, it was to suppress it. I can't remember grieving it. I can't remember being sad almost. It just positive thought my way through it for years, and if that's sat there, suppressed for that long, it's gonna, it doesn't surprise me now that it came out in physical pain, and until I had some sort of mechanism for letting it go, and this worked for me. So that was free writing and the timeline. Unsent letters is one that definitely needs ripping up, Simon. So I wrote, so basically it's as it says, you write a letter, you pick people that you want to write to, and say things that you would not normally say. I mean, and often, something that I often find is that, you have a rant and a rave and a swear and whatever you need. And then ultimately, especially if it's a free writing letter, sometimes it comes back to point me at the interpretation that I've made that's caused the emotion, not actually the other person, but that's what's happened for me. But I just found that very another way to get stuff. If there's certain people that you can't express things to, parents, or even if they're dead. So I wrote to my dead friend. I wrote to my younger self. I read that as a possible journaling exercise somewhere. So I tried everything. So that was another good exercise. Really cathartic. Definitely rip it up. So that was another one that was useful. These 2 are a bit more like practical. I think some of that was dealing with this. The other 3 are maybe dealing with some suppressed stuff. These 2, belief analysis and evidence diary, are journaling exercises that I use to deal with more practical, short-term things. So it's like I always think I had 2 layers of stuff I needed to deal with. I had repressed emotion and then belief about the pain itself. And this is where the evidence diary came in. So I think when you've got 15 years of living with pain, you sort of create all these rules in your head around what is true and what isn't. So like I will bend over once and I'll get this shooting pain down my back and think, right, I can't bend forwards then. I need to avoid bending forwards, must squat like a deadlifter and pick everything up with a dead straight back. And you sort of, and then you do that over multiple years and the pathways form and get ingrained and you've got this belief. Swimming, I could swim front crawl, but I couldn't swim breaststroke because once I'd probably had an episode where something stressful was happening at work, but I went swimming and then linked the two together. Rather than seeing the stressful thing, I linked the activity to the pain. So I had loads of these rules. One of them, I couldn't run. I just could not run. Even when I believed that it was nothing to do with my back, I couldn't run. I would get a massive flare up whenever if I ran for 2 or 3 minutes, I would be in agony. So the evidence diary was, and the belief analysis was sort of two that dealt with that sort of stuff. The evidence diary is just writing. I think it's helping just get those learned pathways unlocked, and this is one I would keep. So it would be, well, if you can't run, how come you had a few beers on a nice sunny afternoon at your parent-in-law's house and the nephews were around and you joined in a game of football because you'd had a few and you were nice and relaxed and you played, and the next day you didn't get any pain? How's that possible? And that goes into the evidence diary. Or even like I was journaling, so my box was changing, I felt a lot of pain in my back. I journaled about the experience, and 20 minutes later, this would happen quite regular actually, and my wife was like, how is this possible? I'd be dancing around the living room with zero pain like 20 minutes later after a journaling exercise. Few and far between, but it did happen, and they went into the evidence diary. And I think whenever there was doubt forming, because 15 years of pathways for me was quite a lot to overturn. I think whenever there was doubt forming, I would go back to that evidence diary, reread it. It's about convincing myself again that there was nothing wrong with me physically. It's just emotional reactions. And I think that just helped cement new pathways that actually there's nothing structurally wrong with me. And Drew and I have talked about this as well in the past. It's funny because it did take a separate physio, I don't know, physio number 5 or whatever it is that I saw when I was starting to run again. I said, I'm definitely not going to damage myself, am I, by running? So I can't see it. I can't see there be I can't see there be any long-term physical damage by you running. Things like that goes into the evidence diary. So that's one to 8. And then the belief analysis was, as I said, I'd created all these rules in my head about what I could and couldn't do. And that might be, I can't bend forwards, or it might have been, if there is change, I'm always going to experience pain. That was a belief that I noticed that I had. I thought, yes, it's not structural, but whenever something changes, that's just what happens to me. I get pain. So that would be a belief. And then, so you've got a column like this. I don't know if this is any good. I'll have to put it on a slide next time.
Sorry, I'm going to stop the share so it's bigger.
Yeah. So I have a belief on one side, and then on the other side, I would just rationalize it, give myself advice. Like, really, it just seemed to help. Like, you don't, just because your job, your role is changing, your manager is changing, you've got pain. It doesn't always have to be this way, because you start rationalizing itself. It's sort of like the answers, but until you get it on paper, it doesn't cement properly, I think. So that's how I understood it. But basically, and that can be about anything. It can be about the pain, or it can be about what's happening at work. So-and-so thinks this of me. So-and-so hates me. And you can actually rationalize it on the other side. So it doesn't have to just be about the pain as well. So I sort of use that belief analysis now as a like a precautionary thing. Precautionary, that's not the right word. To avoid ending up in pain, I do that quite regularly. And then, as Drew said at the beginning, now I don't get pain anymore. I think as things come in, stuff happens in life, I now do get an emotional reaction, and I recognize that I'm having an emotional reaction, and I don't positive think my way through it. Sometimes I'll sit there and go, right, come on then, come on, sadness, give me what you've got, and I'll say, and just see if I can feel sad for a while, and then it'll just disappear. So I have to literally try and get it back sometimes. I have not finished with it yet. Come back. I want to feel sad a bit longer, and it goes. Just goes. And or I'll journal about it. Journal about the situation. And I feel that so now things can complete their cycle and move off. Whereas before they got stuck. So I think that's it. God, sorry, Drew. Yeah, go.
Yeah. So can I just ask you a question that's come up in the chat from just especially talk about beliefs?
Yeah.
So I'll read it out to you. I have many beliefs about what I can and can't do, but I don't believe my pain is structural because it jumps every place. So that kind of fear's gone, I suppose. But I think my fibromyalgia diagnosis, which has been reinforced to me, that it's incurable, has been an enduring belief. So I'm not sure how to change that belief. So what do you suggest around that belief, Daniel?
So I'll give my answer, and Drew, obviously you've got a lot of experience with this as well. So my answer is that since we're talking about journaling, the journaling approach I would have is repetition. So I had to sometimes rewrite that evidence diary multiple times. I think it is really difficult, and it took me finding another surgeon, David Hanscom, I don't know if you've come across him, for example, and just reading some of the stories that he had about people with spines in much worse condition than mine, that didn't have pain, recovery stories, people who just keep reinforcing it. I think there's the evidence diary, other people's recovery stories, and for me, it's just reinforcing that belief, and it does take time. But there's at some time you have to let it go. What other people have said. Stop believing people just because they're wearing a white coat, and find your own truth. Drew.
Thanks, Daniel. I get this question asked a lot for different pathologies. How do you know it's not degenerative disc, it's spondylosis, it's arthritis, it's fibromyalgia, it's chronic fatigue? And the pathways have been reinforced by authority. We're a hierarchical society. UK, US, it's very hierarchical. But we've all been the other side. Push pain to the side a little bit. We've all been on the other side of the hierarchy in childhood. At Christmas. So if we've been lucky, we've felt the excitement of Christmas. Okay, now we knew nothing about Christmas, but we start to be provided evidence, Santa Claus, red suit, white beard, hat. This man comes at Christmas time and he'll give you a present. And, the child might be kind of puzzled by that, but then it's reinforced. Now there's the elf on the shelf who comes every day before Christmas. There'll be a tree that's more proof, and he also has reindeers. In some households, there'll be footprints leading up to the mantelpiece, and there'll be half a carrot and a glass of milk to confirm this. Now, all this is evidence, like Daniel's evidence list, but it's all done to create an autonomic response in the child that we can watch, right? Someone can watch how excited that child gets as more and more they get fooled. Now, that's excitement, and I'm making a parody of it, but that's what happens. Now, the child, as it gains conscious thought at about 6 or 7, and that's with 2 or 3 years, so 7, 8, 9, 10, there's a variation, obviously. You start to question some of these elements. And they'll have heard of someone that actually the fellow in the red suit at school, it's the caretaker, because I've seen his beard come off a little bit and it has less weight. They'll actually think that they'll catch mum or dad wrapped with some wrapping paper on December the 15th, or mentioning presents and money around it. They might question, how is it possible a fella that big could get down the chimney? And if you don't have a chimney, how does he get a magic key? You start to question these things logically and calmly. It's very hard to be calm when you're in the presence of pain because it almost defines irrationality. So how could you not believe all these things that are true? But we've all got to that point. It's come down the stairs on Christmas Day and they say, he's been. You go, it was you, isn't it? It's you. And that autonomic response is gone forever. Unfortunately, it's gone forever. You never get that excitement back at the same intensity. So what do? We start with the next generation saying, he's coming. We want the feeling and we try and get it through other people. And that's the cycle now with pain. With pain, it's not as much fun. But if you take each piece of evidence, the authority of the doctor who says, it is this. Well, actually, look at how it's tubing. And he says, no, it isn't. You find a patient who's sit in a group of fibromyalgia, say, oh, it is, you'll never recover. I'll find you someone who's got fibromyalgia who has recovered. If you say, oh, no, I can't touch my toes because I've got degenerative disc, I'll find you someone who can touch the toes with a degenerative disc. Now, you've got to go looking for these people, you know, but they are out there. If you have the courage to look past your fears and step through them, you'll start to see the evidence. And maybe this exercise of journaling, of writing down that list, that each time you look back at that list, it's harder to get the same autonomic response if the fears are starting to fade, the frustrations are starting to fade. And the evidence is there. Maybe 20 years ago, we couldn't have done this. We'd all be stuck in our own little situations. I don't know, we communicated then. Telephone. I used to ask me mum, and she'd let me have 5 minutes and then say it's costing 10 pence this. So it's not even 20 years ago, that's 40 years ago. But this is a great opportunity to, as Daniel said, look for the evidence in as many different ways as you can. And maybe the stuff that gives you the real strength of fear, look for the polar opposite somewhere. Any more questions? Can we cover the ones on the screen?
Oh yeah.
These last ones. I'm just going to bring it back up and then we will have a little break. We're doing good for time, actually. This is about perfect. So let's just look at this list.
Yes.
See them.
Right. Okay. So, will it make me depressed? When I first tried it, it did. When I came back to it, I did a few things that changed it. One was at the end of things did came up and they did come up. Emotions I did feel that I had suppressed. However, I took the time at the end to do a gratitude list. So I would do something that gave me a bit of a perk to finish with. So gratitude list did it for me. Five things, not three. Three didn't work for me. I found 3 hard to find. Once I found 5, I got about 10. So I always finished with like a gratitude exercise, and then I started, as I separated from the thoughts and emotions. I think for me it's like meditation in slow motion, which is a bit weird to say because meditation isn't high speed, is it? But the thoughts are coming at quite high speed, and as you start to write the thoughts down, it slows them down, and then when you look at them on the paper and they're no longer in your head, it's like you realize you're not your thoughts and emotions. So then it becomes like watching something else. You're the awareness that sees the thoughts and the emotions. You're not the thoughts and the emotions that have once consumed you. You're the awareness of them. And then it becomes for me like a bit like watching a sad film or something. It's like a bit of a cathartic experience. You finish it and I feel good, feel lighter. But yeah, start in the early stages, at least, when things are coming up that have not been felt, gratitude exercises worked. Or what else might, playing with the dog, going for a walk, whatever would lift you up. I think it's important to finish on that. Does it work? So it has done for me. I've also know quite a few people that it has. One of my friends had severe arthritis. Did all the other things as well. This is just one of the tools. For me, it was a massive part of my recovery journaling, and it was for him. So he's made a recovery from, you know, arthritis that was starting to deform his fingers and things, and he's completely recovered, and still uses it as a tool to stop things as things come up in real time. And I know many others that I've spoken to at conferences and things where it has worked. What did I feel? Everything from anger, sadness, grief that I'd not felt before. Just a full range of emotions that I didn't even know I wasn't feeling. Because I was so quick to put a lid on things and positive think. And should I journal? I think so long as there is not any like diagnosis of, I don't know, any suicidal feelings or any like clinical depression or anything like that, then I would have to divert the question to someone who's a professional. But I think other than that, I don't see it as having something to lose. And I think if you're avoiding doing it, I would probably encourage you to, because if people are avoiding doing it, it's because they're avoiding feeling something. That would be my answer.
Yeah. Great, thanks, Daniel. The question about will it make me worse, and almost what will it feel like, and is it going to be, either way you're going to suffer. Either way, you're suffering now if you have pain. If facing the emotional charges, it's probably not a merry dance until you get to the other side. So you have to almost go through the feelings, like Daniel said, and there could be a range of different things. But you can expose yourself to this in 5 minutes if you want to do 5 minutes. We're going to have a little breakout that I'm going to put the kettle on. I haven't got any pain, but I've got pads of paper. I'm going to have a little go. If it's 5 minutes and I have nothing else right, that's okay, because I'm going to have a little go. So if Daniel's done it and he said, listen to him, it's not what he says, it's what he doesn't say. Look at his, pick up and how passionate he is about how much it's helped him. That's what I pick up from this, and that's the point of sharing this. You can expose yourself to those emotions at the rate that you are comfortable with. You have to set the pace for your nervous system. Okay, you have to set the pace. You have to be aware that you're exposing yourself and it. There is no ghost in the machine. You're looking after you by saying, okay, we're going to face this, but just at a level. But you're setting the framework for doing that. So this part, you're picking a time and a place. If you've chosen today, you've chosen it for a reason. You've turned up for a reason. We've all got stuff to do in half an hour or an hour, but we've got this time now to do something. Even if it's just hold the pen. Like Daniel said, somebody didn't even write at the start. The sun is shining. Just get the feel of the pen in your hand. Set the scene. So set the practical scene of a pen and a paper, one you're going to rip up or keep, depending on what you write, or burn. You've got a wood burner. Know that you're not going to be interrupted. And if you are, then that's okay. If you can soon rip something up inconspicuously, nobody would kind of know. But you're creating a state of inner calm. It's the intent behind which you do this. This is the key, the intent. So if I can only keep calm for 5 minutes and the rest of your day is 23 hours, 55 minutes of busyness, that's okay, because the 5 minutes is better than 24 hours of it. And it's just another way in. To the breathing, alongside the breathing, alongside a short walk, alongside a chat with your friend, alongside setting some boundaries at work. It's part of the picture, but it could be quite an important part. And you're doing it to gain perspective, to grow. Rather than feeling stuck, it's to grow.
Well, I was going to add something, Drew, that I'd forgotten to. But if I'll wait till you finish. I thought you'd finish your point, but
no, I have. I finished, yeah.
So just with the sort of actually technique of writing itself, some things that really worked is that obviously you've got try and write quickly, as quickly as you can, without any worry about grammar, without looking how neat your writing is. It's almost like, for me, the faster that the faster that I write, the less filtering there is for the brain. if that makes sense. I meant to mention that earlier. So you're writing with abandon. It's going to get ripped up, so you can say whatever you want to whomever you want. You can scribble it and then rip it for good measure. Yeah, there were just two things. Yeah, right. The idea is you writing freely.
Yeah, that's interesting again, because you could easily be hijacked by our traits or the traits of perfectionism and want to do perfect. The brain hijacks anything, wants to walk perfectly, wants to exercise perfectly. So you're absolutely right. You almost got to be, let's just go. Let's just go. Are there any more questions at this point? Any in the chat, or does anybody want to say anything else at this point?
And we won't ask for anyone to give any specifics of what they've written.
Absolutely not. You don't have to share anything at all. It's none of our business. None of our business. If you feel you want to share anything or how you felt about the experience or anything like that, that's okay. And what I suggest is, if everyone's happy, to come back in about 20 minutes, go put the kettle on. If you've got a pen or a piece of paper, it's better on the pen and paper than to type, actually. I've read, Daniel, I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, although people might prefer typing nowadays. But again, if it's you want to dispose of it, it's probably better on paper.
So I've just seen a question from Pam as well. I do either. It actually works for me sometimes if I type it on a phone even. In the notes, I've had, you know, if I've been in a hotel at work or something, I needed to get something down, and that's worked just as well. I think it's a personal thing. I've heard the theory is that writing's better, free writing's better for the connection, but it doesn't seem to make a difference to me. Pam mentioned I've heard not to write about pain. I actually wrote a letter to the pain, and sometimes I think that suggestion comes from making sure you're not just complaining, having 15 minutes of writing about how awful everything is with regards to the pain. I think that's where that comes from. But I didn't come up with the idea, so I read it somewhere about writing to the pain itself. But it was when I was telling it, thanks very much for making me aware that there was stuff I needed to deal with, but now you can bog off. It was along those lines was the letter. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Drew.
Again, it's the intent. It's the should I walk? Well, it depends. If you walk and you're going to look at every step and be petrified with every step, don't walk. If you're going to breathe, I can't do the breathing, it makes you too anxious. Well, you're breathing anyway, but for 3 or 4 breaths, you might be able to slow it down. It's the intent. Should I talk about the pain? Should I write to the pain? Some people say don't ever talk about the pain at all. It's someone as Howard Schumann, but it's how you interpret the pain. How should you talk to a dog? Well, there's no logical reason to talk to a dog. A dog doesn't understand English, right? But it's how you talk to the dog. It's a tone of voice. You're talking to a subconscious mind that doesn't understand. It understands some meaning behind language. It's the intent with which you're feeding back. It's the intent. This is me being calm in your presence. This is me being calm in your presence. This is me writing about you in your presence.
And I think out of everything that was on my timeline, I mean, everyone's got some sort of stressful event, whether it's changing schools, whether it's new jobs, whether it's, I think there is, I've not met a person who hasn't had somebody else in their life that's annoyed them. I think there are like a million places you could go first without writing about pain. And I think that I would leave that right to the end, because the pain is there to tell you about other things.
That's a great point. There's a great point. There's lots of other places to start.
Yeah.
It's 5 to 2. And how about we meet up at 20 past? Have a cat, put the kettle on, have a drink, have a little walk around the garden, do what you want. It leaves you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 if you do want to join in. And I'll pause this recording and we'll jump back together in about 20 minutes. 2:15. Okay? So I think we've got 5 of us back in the room. I didn't know if it would be like the Mary Celeste. We're going to do a runner. But it's really just a if there's anyone who wants to share feedback on what they've just done, whether they did something or didn't do something, whether they found it too hard to do or actually had a go. You don't have to share anything detail of what you wrote. I'll start. I don't have pain, but we all have the potential for pain. We have the potential for overload. The traits that you see that are consistent in people, persistent pain, everybody has the potential for them, because it's all about control. So if it's, and there's not anybody who doesn't want some control over some part of their life. Now, it might be 1,000 things, it might just be one thing. But if they lose control of that one thing that's important to them, they'll do the best to get it back. They'll try everything to do it. They'll, so everybody has the potential for this. So I had a go just on the undercurrent of stuff that comes up, that arrange things that happen in my life now with 4 kids, a wife, and a parent, work, colleagues, friends of friends, families, stuff. And so just picked up the pen and started to write. Now, it's interesting what I said about create a boundary, because I have a little office where you might see me do some of the videos and bits and pieces that I do. My wife's just in the kitchen, and my son is leaving home with his girlfriend. So that's kind of a thing, isn't it? And it's the first child of my 4 that's going to be leaving the house. I mean, I'm happy for him to go, to be honest. But you know what I mean? It's like, it's that feeling of, gosh, they don't need me, and da-da-da-da. So stuff like that. And so I started to write. And my wife knew there was a gap in this little meeting, and she's quite excited about the bits and pieces they have to sort out. She just knocked on the door halfway through the page, and I felt myself thought, I better stop. It's a funny situation. I wasn't writing about her. I wouldn't dare. I've had to set the coal burner on, have it ready quick. I'll do that another day when she's out of the house. But I felt, God, that I'm in a different place mentally. And I just turned over the page and it stopped, and we had a chat for a minute, and I said, we'll be done in about half an hour or whatever. And I thought, but I went back to it, I finished the sentence, so I almost came to an end. I felt like sighing afterwards. I just ripped it up and it's gone in the bin. So that's my feedback. I feel better for it. So does anybody else want to? Don't feel you have to, but if you want to raise your hand, go on. Oh, great. Go on, Alison. You might have to unmute yourself.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. I've been dabbling with journaling for a while, and I'll be honest, I think I've not had a massive amount of success with it, which is why I was interested to hear your perspective on it, and it has really helped. So I tried doing the free write, and I started writing about one parent and ended up talking about the other that I hadn't intended to write about at all. And I think that was quite interesting, like where I ended and where I started. I was like, oh, afterwards, and I was looking at it, I was like, I hadn't, not that you could plan it, but yeah, I was just surprised where my train of thought went, and it was interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Simon. Join in.
Yeah, I was sitting here just limbering up with the pen and thinking just about the timeline and just where to begin and thinking about now where we're doing this. But actually, it's really interesting how dominoes topple, it seems, in your head. I suddenly found myself going to a point in time, not going to say what, but very specifically, and I thought, I haven't been aware of that for quite a while. So it's been a context with some of the things that you've said, both Daniel and you, Drew, where I've suddenly had a space to look at a timeline and think, oh yeah, that's still lingering around, and I can feel it. I can feel it, you know.
Well, that's fascinating. It's fascinating when you say timeline, I can feel it.
The past is the present in the body, isn't it? And that's the feeling. Sorry about this. This is co-worker spaces for you.
Oh, it's
you
okay.
just have some guests coming, I guess. So yeah, I think the past becomes the present in the body, and that's where I'm holding the pain, I think.
Oh, great. Thank you very much for sharing that. Daniel, you don't need to do this. Did you have another little go? Or did you just
I
got a
did
cup of tea?
actually. Mine's here, all ripped up here. Look. All over my screen.
Get some confetti.
No, I didn't have anything particularly bothering me right now, but so I tried just I do it occasionally, just tried the free writing of just seeing what comes out, and there's always interesting bits. Yeah, it just made, and I just remember jotting that I still get emotional talking about my friend, and there's still bits in there that I keep coming out and getting gone, which I found quite nice actually. It's just still little bits that come and go.
Is it all right to ask a question?
Yeah.
I was just wondering, do you find that you're writing more about the right now stuff or stuff from the past?
Now it's just what comes up in the moment, because I feel like you might have tell the way I talked about it. I tried everything and anything, so I think I've unturned every possible stone I can think of. However, so usually it's now, if I do this exercise now, it's about not adding any more stuff in there. I find it a useful exercise, especially if like I said, I feel the emotion now, so I tend to sit with it. But if it starts to become tension and it doesn't go into pain anymore, but you know, like you just start feeling a little bit of tension, then I'll know that I'm not feeling an emotion, and that's how I'll write about it.
Again,
That makes sense. Thanks.
Daniel, did you see Pam's question?
No, I hadn't.
I'll just read that to you. So, did you have fear of the pain? And if so, how did journaling help that?
So yes, definitely I had fear of the pain, and you know, that's enough to trigger pain in itself, isn't it? I think it was most prominent when I was trying to introduce running again, because it took me a while to unpick that actually. So I got to the point where I was pretty much pain-free other than running, and I had to start from 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, sort of building up my evidence diary. And within that, I would sometimes I'd get back, say I couldn't complete a run, I would come back and I'd journal about it, and that's where it came out. You're anticipating the pain, and the anticipation is making you tense. The tense is turning into muscle spasms. You're feeling pain, and sort of just again, the journaling helped, even though I knew that, and I can talk about it now. Sometimes until someone asks you the question or you're forced to write it down, it just moves around and is one of the additional thoughts that are whizzing around your head and your body. I think, so yes, I did feel anxious about the pain and fear of the pain. That was enough to trigger the pain. And it was just a case of trying to unlearn it. Evidence.
And in the moment of feeling the pain is a signal for you to attend to you, me to attend to me. It's a signal to attend to yourself, not in the historical reactions that we've used in the past. It's to attend to ourselves in the present with a different behavior. So yes, you can feel the pain or anticipate the pain, and if it comes unawares, but it's knowing that you're going towards it in a way that when it comes, if it comes, there won't be the same reaction. There won't be the same running away from it. There won't be the same resistance to it. I'll be okay with what it presents, and I'll stay calm in the presence of my own pain. You know, and whether you're holding a pen or walking in the woods or going for a run or going back in the workplace where you were bullied, it's staying calm when the autonomic instinctual reactions run by a brain that's a million times more powerful than our conscious brain will predict the best way forward based on what we've practiced. So it's just being calm and consistent, so they expose yourself to the pain, to the fear, to the emotion, just low enough where you can maintain that. And if you lose control, and the pain is not going to damage you, it might have been it's too much exposure. But really, the next time you do that, actually, you realize you got a bit further down the path, further with the pen. So you may well experience things that you don't choose for yourself. But actually, like Daniel said, if you're fearing this, that's probably what you should do. because on the other side of fear, that transmutation to excitement or exhilaration, it's in the flip of a blink of an eye. Like when you throw a child up that's scared, don't do it. And you've thrown them and you catch them, it's gone. It's do it again. Fear to excitement is a flip. It's that fast. You might only get the exhilaration for a short while, then the fear kicks in again. But it should be tantalizing enough if you've not experienced it yet to have seen it in others to say, I'm going to keep exploring what they're exploring. And this is it, isn't it? This is doing things that maybe 4 out of 5 of us aren't maybe as proficient as Daniel, but he's a great example. It's worthwhile repeating that calmness. It's not repetition that makes the change, it's the emotional attachment you give to the behavior. So if you write with urgency, intensity, and fear and frustration, you'll just repeat those patterns. If you write with calmness and consistency and feel the emotion, but stay calm and consistent and compassionate to yourself, actually that's what'll shine through. It doesn't really matter the exercise that you use to do it. But this has been such a lovely insight for me. And I'm sure Simon, do you want to say something?
I was just going to say, yes, indeed, the insight of that ability to get in touch with those thoughts and feelings and process them to a point where they're satisfactory for you to not experience the pain in the same way. I think that really struck home why I can journal, to help myself recover more. It's good. Thank you.
Any final words, Alison?
No, other than thanks. It's been really helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks, Alison. Pam, just give us a wave. I hope we've answered some of your questions. I hope you've found it something useful maybe to consider. And it's one part of the journey, really. So thank you for joining us from America. Daniel, it's been an absolute pleasure. Any final word from you?
No, just thank you for giving me the time to try and help.
Thank you.
Just share this last screen so you can, this is more for the recording, for anybody who watches the recording, that just has some references on there. I move that.
Yeah.
This site, PPD Association, is kind of an American organization. There's lots of mind-body research articles where the evidence is apparent. These are 3 that Daniel highlighted that are particular to expressive writing and show the benefits of that. And so you can read around it if you choose to in the future. And I'm sure there'll be, over time, there'll be more evidence that's produced in terms of anecdotes and clinical studies that add to the body of resources that are going to help people recover. So for anybody watching, thanks for taking the time to watch. I hope you find it beneficial, and thank you for all the participants today, and for Daniel for his kind of calm expertise and guiding us all the way through it. I hope you all stay in touch, and
thank you.
I'm sure we'll all meet again.
Good luck.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Drew. And cheers, Alison. Nice to meet you. And Pam.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.